This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Mother's Day is almost here, and you can get her the most beautiful time-tested gift around. A watch she can wear every day from Movement. Whether mom's into classic dress watches, rare and refined ceramics, or tried and true bestsellers, Movement has something she'll love. And right now you can save big on the best Mother's Day gift ever with up to 50% off site-wide during Movement's Mother's Day sale at mvmt.com. Again, that's up to 50% off at mvmt.com.
Hi, I'm Karen Conable. I played Judy and Chucky in Plus One and Mrs. Peacock in Home. And you're listening to the X-Cast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I am your host, Tony Black, once again, and as part of our coverage of episode 4 of season 11, The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat. I still love that title. It's just amazing. I'm really delighted to be joined by I'd say probably the main guest star of that episode, Mr. Brian Huskey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me via Skype.
Good old Skype.
Yeah, just a little promotional thing for Skype there.
It's really great to have you on, Brian. So I really appreciate you doing this and talking about the this episode that you're on, which, as we record, is a big mystery, to be honest, in many ways.
Me too. I haven't seen the final cut, so it could be terrible, but I don't with Darren in charge of it.
Yeah, well, going by Darren Morgan's previous episodes, I think we're all salivating for this one.
I mean, not to toot my own horn, but here I go tooting my own horn. But all the reviews of the season have cited that one as sort of like the standout, which is really great.
So I've already said I had Dean Hagland on the show, who plays Langley, a few weeks ago, and he famously now spoiled the second episode for me with the plot before we saw it, which we agreed it was fine. He was happy to do that. So do you want to do the same? Do you want to tell me about your character and a little bit about the episode? Because this will have going out obviously after.
Yes.
So tell us about Reggie.
Well, Reggie is, I guess there's one plot point that I will hold back, but Reggie is someone who shows up to Scully and, oh my God, you know what? I just forgot the character's name. Scully popped up in my head. I was like, oh, the other one.
That's good. You got the other one. Yes.
Scully, the other one. He shows up and he says, like, look, I know our last case was the last one we've ever done together, but there's one more case I need help with. And they're like, what are you talking about? And my character reveals that there is a force in play that is altering everyone's collective memories. And so people will have a different view of the same memory. And so they don't remember that we used to work together. And I'm coming back and saying, like, of course you don't remember because your memory has been altered of, the past. And so it's revealed that I was a member of the X-Files team.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
It's pretty great. And so it's this whole thing of just sort of trying to get to the core of that, of what's happening and why, and then there is a plot point I feel like I shouldn't reveal.
Okay.
So I won't do that unless I don't know. I mean, if we're talking about this after the fact, then people are like, well, we know what you're not talking about, so.
Yeah, it's to spare me, I suppose. But I mean, after I don't mind. Go ahead, Brian. If you want to talk about it, it's fine.
It's a little M. Night Shyamalan, just in the fact that it turns out that I'm crazy, that this is all in my head.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Escaped mental patient, but I have this very elaborate revisionist history that I was a member of the X-Files, and in shooting it was great because they actually go back and insert me in some sort of famous X-Files scenes.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so I got to go and like for this episode, I can't remember. I feel like I had 21 costume looks.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's all over. It's like, flashbacks to past episodes, and then to this mysterious like hospital in South America, and to the present day, and then all sorts of stuff. It's all over the place. Then the really interesting thing is it has a very not holding its punches back sort of criticism of Trump. And it's basically this kind of thing of it's the perspective of between like people seeing Trump and how he is as a president and being like, you see this, right? This guy's terrible and crazy and just wreaking havoc. And then other people, it's like, I don't know, he seems it's pretty good. So. And the good thing about this episode, it also involves aliens, which I know a lot of fans were. Let's get back to aliens, guys. Let's get some.
Yeah, we haven't had that many aliens, like actual aliens, turn up for a while. So
yeah, good to go back to the roots. But since it is Darren Morgan episodes, it's humorous and quirky and sort of plays with a lot of genre ideas and stuff.
Well, I've always thought that his episodes almost feel like a little pocket universe in the X-Files. Yeah. They're their own kind of little thing that is separate. So it's always fun. It's great because there's a whole group of them now. You can have like a little Darren Morgan like day of X-Files episodes, which is great. Like a little marathon. So how did this come about then? You guest starring on the episode. Were you approached by Darren Morgan and how did it come to be?
I did an audition for it, but I have to give a shout out to Kumail Nanjiani, who is an actor, and also like I mainly do comedy, and he does comedy too. And he had done an episode last season, and Kumail and I had worked on a network TV show, and he just said mentioned me for a part to him. He's like, Brian Huskey is great and like, cool to hang out with, which I am. And, and I guess it just sort of and Darren was like, yeah, I do like that guy. I forgot about him. He's not exactly right for this part, but I think Darren just sort of filed me away. And so then when I came in for the audition, I think I did a good job apparently. And I think that thing of him having a little bit of sort of pre-existing faith in me helped out a lot. But for me, it was a good, just as a journeyman actor, it's a good thing of you never know. Like, you never know if you go in for something you might not be right for now, and then 2 years later, it pays off that you made a good impression. So always do your best, kids.
There's the lesson.
Yeah.
It's really nice that Kumail Nanjiani recommended you, though. I mean, yeah, he was in the last Darren Morgan one, wasn't he, as you said, and he's great. He's had a great X-Files year, really, with the big sick and all the X-Files jokes that. That's a great movie. So yeah, that's really nice. So what scenes did you do in the audition? Were they scenes from this episode, or were they different ones? How did it work?
I think it's the first two encounters with both Scully and the other guy. Mulder, guys. We know it's Mulder.
We might just call him that now on this podcast. We might just go, Scully and that guy. What's his name again? So yeah, it was. What was it like then working with Darren Morgan? Was it a particularly interesting experience? Because he's, obviously he's one of the most loved like writer directors on the X-Files, and everyone I think thinks that his method or his approach would be really different maybe from other directors. But yeah, what was that like?
It was funny because he sort of told me going in, because I did it like my audition. I treated it very seriously. Like I played to the stakes of like how intense this guy was, and that he seemed unhinged, and that something was troubling him enough that he even though he was trying to sort of like persuade them to join him on this sort of cracking this case, that he's barely able to sort of keep his anxieties in check and stuff. And he was like, that was great. That's exactly what you needed to do. It's like, but just know that I'm going to have you do the take that you want to do first. and I'm going to ask you to do like a ridiculous, campy version of it, like really sort of tongue in cheek, like bad 1970s kind of like, cop drama stuff or something. And then, we'll pick and choose stuff that we like if we want to combine it. But literally he asked me to do he's like, give a Don Knotts sort of double take when you see this, and, just really goofy stuff. And then we just sort of do more down the middle. So that was interesting. And yeah, he's definitely a writer, because writers usually, they have their ideas, and when they kind of hand them over to actors or put them out, for execution, they have their own anxiety around it. So it was interesting that he started as a writer, and he's always got that. And so as a director, he has his idea that he's trying to execute, but there's a little bit of like, please don't hurt my idea. Please don't, please don't judge me for this weird idea that I have. But he was I love him. Like he was very supportive and fun, collaborative, which I think is the best way to approach mainly anything that has a comedy, because it's like, even if it's written on the page, once you start to do it, it's going to have a different taste or feel or sound to it. So he's open to kind of like fudging a line or massaging it a little bit or something. And then he would be very apologetic. He would give me a note. It's like, is that okay? Are you cool? You're the director. You're in charge. Like, stop saying I'm the director. I think you know that you are, right? Everybody's listening to you.
Yeah.
He's just a very down to earth, guy. Not one of these directors is sort of like, I am God. Welcome to my universe.
That doesn't surprise me really. And it's interesting how, like you say, he allows you to sort of massage some of the lines or improvise. In places, because his scripts always feel very precise, really, with a lot of the way he writes and the structure of it. So it's always been hopefully one day I'll get to speak to him about all this if we're lucky enough. But yeah, he seems to really have specific ideas. It's great that you got to play around with it and everything. I suppose as someone who writes comedy yourself, and performs comedy, it must be a really interesting experience in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting for me when I do drama stuff, because I think for me, I get more nervous if I feel like I'm very beholden to exactly the word, and the exact idea. Mainly because of what I said. Like, I feel like once you put it on its feet and stuff, and you're reacting to the other actors and stuff, it'll change, and you have to kind of allow those moments to happen. So I think he was good in that, going back what you said, he's very precise. He's very precise in the construction of the overall idea. And he was really good about explaining why in this super dramatic moment he wants me to do a goofy look or whatever. And then when he would sort of tell me, I was like, that's great. Because he has it mapped out. Like, he's precise in the sense of he has it mapped out for what the edit's going to be and what it's going to use in the scene, and how, ending on saying the line. And this is where, starting with what I said about working in drama, where they have a precise idea. It helps if somebody has a precise idea and they let you know what it is, as opposed to like, try to figure out what's in my head. You don't know? Well, I guess you're not good enough to be me. And he was really good at, like, if you say the line sort of on a down note at the end of this, my cut to the next scene won't have the same feeling. So if you could just do it with a little, and that kind of stuff is great, because then you're not just doing your scenes, you're participating in the whole piece, which is great.
That collaboration, as you said,
because as a guest actor or guest star, a lot of times you feel like you just kind of like parachute in, say your line, and then to be in an episode where I was there front to back and I got a lot of screen time, that's pretty sweet.
Well, yeah, that's the impression I'm getting from what you're saying. Obviously, everyone who's listening to this will know that by now they're listening. But yeah, it does feel like you're an integral part of, and he does like to do that, doesn't he? Yeah. I mean, he does have with a lot of his episodes, he has these very key guest stars, like Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, which is one of his best ones from years ago. Peter Boyle had this really central part to that, so it's great that he writes these kind of characters who are, I mean, I've every faith that Reggie will be another really memorable character.
I was not I watched a little bit of X-Files, but I was not a devotee. But I'm well aware of like how iconic the series is and how much it means to people. And yeah, to have something that sort of feels like it is a role that is like, oh yeah, that, it's kind of like getting like a little movie. I was like, oh, I gotta eat in a little movie. It's really cool.
Well, that I was going to ask you that actually about what your relationship is to the show. As you say, you weren't a devotee, but yeah, how much had you seen of it before, or how much were you aware of it, I suppose, when you came to the role?
Well, I was well aware of it, and I, when it first came out, I was my mid-20s, I think, and I had some roommates who were super into it, so I would check it out. But at that time, I was just not a sci-fi person so much.
Yep.
But it was inescapable. It just like the cultural sort of embrace of it was great. And I'm fans of both of Duchovny and Gillian. They're like, I think they're fantastic actors. Like the stuff they've done apart from X-Files really shows that. And they were great to work with. They're really cool.
Yeah, that was another thing I was going to ask. Yeah, because you presumably have had a lot of scenes with both of them, so it must have been really great to work with them. What was the feeling like on set? Were they enjoying it? Was there a lot of laughs with this one? Because I imagine they enjoyed Darren Morgan episodes themselves. So
yeah, the only downside was like pretty much all of our scenes were in parking decks, so it was it was just like being underground in a concrete sort of like prison for 3 days straight and stuff. Yeah, but they're as I was nervous that it was going to be sort of like, oh my God, I'm walking into this established sort of, world. And they were just cool. Just hang out in between and chat, and everybody gets a little tired, at times. So you kind of retreat, go do your thing. And yeah, I think, I wanted to kind of test the waters. I always do. So I did a few bits or just said a few things early on, and they laughed and to them I was like, okay, cool, we have a dialogue, that's great. The worst is where you sort of put it out there and they're like, ugh, no way.
Sounds like you've had that happen before.
Yeah. That's happened before. I learned early on that you don't, when you're doing like a network TV drama, that you don't add a button, or you don't during rehearsal. You don't add a button because they get very nervous. Yeah. That's how this is. Okay, cool.
I don't know if people. I mean, I'm saying this. People may well be aware, but you've been so many things over the years. So many really, themselves quite iconic or hugely popular shows and movies and things like that.
Yeah.
So it must be. Does it feel almost like, I know the X-Files is off, something else in a way. I suppose it's such a big iconic thing. But does it feel like you've been on other kinds of projects where you've had that sort of touch with, wow, I'm on like Curb Your Enthusiasm, or I'm on something like this, something that's really gone into the popular culture?
Yeah. No, I think, because I'm an actor, I always kind of lead with insecurity or downplaying, out of self-protection. You kind of downplay stuff. You're like, it's not a big deal. But if I think about it, like, I've been completely blessed and honored to be part of, that I do stuff on Veep, and I do stuff for cartoon series here called Bob's Burgers, and they're just cool.
Yep.
That's just a good group of people. I think the through line for almost all of them has been the people behind it are just good, sane people. And I think that you just don't, I think when you work in chaos, you might sort of produce, you can easily produce, quality stuff, but you put so much more emotional and mental energy battling that stuff that these other shows just execute themselves in a great way, because I think they hire people that they want to be around and who are excited about the work. So, I mean, I have an improv teacher who's just like, we're asking advice about working and going out in the industry and stuff. He's like, just don't be a dick to people. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Like, just don't spread bad energy or make other people responsible for your neediness if you have it and stuff. Just sort of,
It sounds like obvious advice, doesn't it? But I suppose it doesn't always happen in that way.
And it doesn't happen that way. And a lot of times it's hard to execute in the moment in a way, because as much as people will put on sort of a straight face or, I've got this competent kind of thing, which is one of the reasons I like Darren, because he would occasionally be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, yes, you do. You totally know what you're doing. You're just saying that to kind of calm yourself down. I was like, oh, totally. But everyone's freaking out. Everyone is a little behind their eyes a little bit. They're like, oh my God, they're going to find out that I'm a sham and a fraud and stuff. So I do think that, that can kind of leak out, because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of money involved in this stuff.
A lot of expectation.
A lot of expectations, yeah. Especially with something like this. I think rebooting something must have been scary for them, to kind of go back in and sort of, walk back into that world and say, like, here we are again. It's going to be just as good as before. No, it actually needs to be better. Okay, no pressure.
Yeah, this is it. And I think everyone's, there's lots of fan debates as to whether or not it's, it's the same kind of show or everything. But I think that the response to this season so far, 3 episodes in, has been really, really positive on the whole.
Yeah.
There's been a real, even among the fans who are maybe slightly critical of the previous season, I think overall, the first 5 episodes obviously went out to critics and things like that, including yours. And yeah, the response has been fantastic. So I think there's a real buzz around it right now, which is exciting. We haven't felt that in a long time. Was the response to the last season that, just in reading some of the reviews and stuff, I gauged that one of the criticisms was it was too serialized, that it was too much of an ongoing sort of interwoven plot point, as opposed to some of the kind of standalone encounters with weird aliens and otherworldly situations. It's telling that the most popular one was Darren Morgan's of that season, because it did feel like the older show and it was its own thing and it stood on its own, whereas the others, there was a little bit, and there was, people said 6 wasn't enough, and
right.
There were various different criticisms for it. I enjoyed them all,
right.
and it did really well. The ratings were stellar.
Because I feel like now television, they always say we're in this golden age of television, and a lot of it is bingeable, built to kind of keep you on the hook to find out what happens in the next episode. But with X-Files, it seems like there's people really like the kind of standalone, just here's another case they're dealing with and it's wrapped up. It's almost like it goes back to there are two different, there's the kind of serialized execution of an idea that's sort of like the early westerns they show in the movie theaters, come in next week to find out what happens to people, and then there's the other version where it is sort of like a procedural, where it's there's a case, you wrap it up, and then there's another case.
Yeah, and it's funny because in the old days, and I'd include myself in this as a long-term fan, the thrill was in what we call the mythology episodes, the alien episodes, the continuing story. But
right.
in these days, it is like you say, it is the standalone episode. The one we've just had this week has gone down really well because it's its own thing, and that's why again Darren Morgan's episodes always go down well because they're their own thing. So I think people like just having something that's it stands apart, and I think that's.
In considering the reboot, if there's that kind of discussion of that seems to be sort of the approach now that's appealing to audiences, to have a bingeable, serialized effect to it. But if you're not releasing it as a bingeable thing, the audience doesn't have the same reaction. It's that debate between where is network television and then where is sort of the Netflix and Amazon, where you can sort of get a whole series and devour it in one afternoon.
And I think with the X-Files, that wasn't how it used to be. Obviously I know television's changed, as you say, but it was very much, connected story, then you'd have 2 or 3 standalone stories. So I think people struggled with the idea that you would binge the X-Files. I don't think anyone likes the idea of binging it. I think it's one of those, which is interesting, really. But it has to evolve. It has to change with the times. But I think they've got the balance right with this season. It feels like they've got that balance of interwoven stories and standalone. So it's good. It's going down well, and it must be nice as to come on at this late stage. And there's a lot of talk about this being the last season of the show. There's a very good chance it will be, I think.
Yeah, you could sort of look at it as like I ended the series. It was in the last season of Verb. I'll be in the last season of Veep this year, and so yeah, I'm the death nail for quality series.
Once you're on the last season, it's definite. It's definitely the last season once.
Oh yeah.
Once you're on it,
never cast me in the first season.
How do you feel about Veep then? Because Veep has gone down wonderfully in the US. Is it a bit sad to see that ending?
It is. Yeah, it is. But it feels appropriate. We've had to delay shooting because Julia has been dealing with some health issues, and they're just like giving her the time to kind of deal with it before we get back into it. But the series could have ended this year. It's sort of like she tries to give it a go again, fails. They kind of get scattered to the wind, and then it could have ended on just them in sort of like the civilian sector, but it feels like one more stab at it is a good way to sort of like round it up. It's a kind of thing of like I think British television does a much better job of being like, let's just keep it as a perfect thing and not sort of drive it into the ground. And I don't think they've done that at all.
No.
I'm close with Matt Walsh, and he's like, I do this show forever. Like I'm so happy doing it. But I think they're very respectful of what Armando created originally with the thick of it and stuff, and just that thing of like, just if it's quality, keep it quality. Don't sort of let it become too much of like a franchise kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, because very different shows I know to the X-Files, but Armando Iannucci is another one of those creatives like Chris Carter with the X-Files, who I just think he's just brilliant. I think he's an absolute genius. So was it great working with him?
Oh, completely. And he is exemplary of that approach and spirit of like, we're hiring you, like he said as such because I was up for one of the, like I did sort of like for the cast series regular, tests and stuff. And he came in and he was like, I can't cast everyone here, but everyone who's here for this callback, there's something that I feel like you understand what we're doing here, and I would be excited to see what you bring to it. So if you don't end up as a series regular, you will be in the series. And he was good to that word, with almost everybody. And he just does that. They don't do that as much now because I think the timeline is different, but it would be, you go in, they'd have a script, you'd rehearse it, you'd improvise some stuff. If they liked it, they incorporated it. If you sort of gave a different read and it changed the feeling of the scene, they'd incorporate it. So they had the edit. He's not sort of like, he sets up a world and invites other people to sort of like expand the world. And I think that's a sign of like not only genius but of confidence. That he knows the genius he has is seeing the people and seeing the resources he has to sort of improve on what he built. And it's just a really great way of doing comedy, and it's just a great way of working. I think it's much more. It increases exponentially the possible results as opposed to having like one result. And in comedy is like, you learn that from stand-ups. Stand-ups will have a joke and they'll keep telling the joke, and the joke evolves and changes in reaction to the audience or the performer. But if they have the joke and like, this is my joke, it's the only way I'm going to do this, you don't allow for any kind of growth or anything. So he's a good guy. He's a good guy too. Nice.
Yeah, I think it shows in Veep really, which is absolutely brilliant. So it's going to be bittersweet to see that go. Really, I think.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's a great show. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not just upcoming Veep, is it, for you? Because you've got something else in the pipeline, which is a TV special that you mentioned. So, do you want to tell us about this?
I would love to. Thank you for that opportunity. And I asked if I could do this. No, I do. There's a channel here called Adult Swim that is from it's on this network called Cartoon Network that from 11 p.m. on switches over to very experimental sort of alternative comedy. And a lot of the stuff is really kind of intense and dark and stuff. And for whatever reason, I always enjoy that kind of comedy. Mm. So last year I did a special called Mr. Neighbor's House. That's basically a very dark internal sort of kids show that takes place in this guy's mind. And so we're doing another special of that this year. So that special is available on YouTube, but you can get on their website, which is very hard to navigate. I will admit that. Right. But you just search for Mr. Neighbor's House. Okay. And I'm very proud of it. It's very insane. And it's very dark. So people are going, it's oh, this will be a funny, kids. Oh my God. Oh, geez.
Yeah, just parental advisory. Maybe a little.
It's definitely a kids show for adults. So.
Right. Yeah. You said when we were emailing back and forth, you mentioned how there's a sort of, I suppose it's little bit like Reggie then, in some respects, in that there's this, in someone's mind and that kind of thing, which is quite coincidental, I guess.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like that's kind of popping up a lot. I'm always curious as to why, what zeitgeist stuff happens where there'll be multiple shows that sort of deal with the internal universe of your mind and how fragile it is and stuff. I mean, I've always been fascinated by that stuff, but there are a few other people doing it, so it's pretty cool.
It's interesting as well how the most recent episode before yours and the X-Files has also dealt with mental illness in a very different way. It's also dealt with the mind and things like that. So yeah, it seems to be quite a prevalent idea right now. I
think, just going back to what Darren was doing with it being sort of an examination of how how split we are in our country. I think, people talk about this kind of rift in identity. And I think, your mind is an organ, but what it ends up executing and expressing is so much more than if your heart doesn't work, it doesn't work, or it works. But your mind can sort of force this person to become another person and have, all these different ramifications in how that person interacts with the world and stuff. And so now this, here in America, I feel like everybody's the American dream is being questioned because what is that? What is the American dream? And everyone has a different kind of curated interpretation of it. And then so you're all sort of looking at it from no, the American dream is this, right? And no, it's this. And so you have all these different perspectives. And I think that's what Darren was playing with, of just the same idea, the same moment, the same memory, but from a different, all these different perspectives. Yeah, I feel basically I feel like our country is going crazy. So it's in keeping with the increase in sort of horror film or the Romero kind of coming up, starting the Day of the Dead series in reaction to racism, and then in reaction to the Cold War. We kind of pull out our demons and play with them when we're feeling unsafe, I think.
Yeah, and Chris Carter and the X-Files have been particularly good at that over the years. They've always had their finger on the pulse or about what's coming over the next hill. And there's definite references, not even directly to what's happening with the US political situation, but it's in there. It's definitely in there. And it's the same in England. We've got our own similar kind of problems in a way. We feel like we're going through a very similar thing about identity and perspective, and just seeing so many. I mean, me personally, I'm very much on the I don't know how much you've read about Brexit, but I'm on the Remain side. So,
right.
And it feel like we're on two sides now. It feels like there's Leave, Remain, and you've got a country that's completely divided, and one side looks at the other side and thinks, you are crazy. Why would you think this way? Why would you do this? And it's a scary time.
It is scary. But the interesting thing is, and I keep trying to go back to this anytime I sort of debate a Trump supporter or something, at the core, everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants safety and security and stability. And so it's interesting when we feel like we're arguing about different things. We're arguing for the same goal, but it's the execution is the sort of way of getting to that is where we see each other as crazy. I feel like people would benefit if they just sort of said, like, so at the end of the day, you don't want to be killed and I don't want to be killed, right? So what's the Venn diagram there? So
that's pretty true, really.
Yeah.
I think you should run. I think you should run for president, Brian. I think that simple logic would work. I think.
Yeah, it's hard to put on a bumper sticker, though. I guess nobody wants to die. Husky, 2020.
If I was American, I'd vote for you. It is interesting that Darren Morgan and the rest of the X-Files team are tapping into these things, and it's good. I think that's why people enjoy it so much, and I think why it strikes a chord, because always through fiction, this is how we can try and make sense of it all in many ways, or come to understand it. So, but yeah. Thank you, Brian, for coming on and talking about this. It's been really nice to speak to you and get your perspective on this guest appearance, which everyone in the world has seen except me right now. But,
me too. You and I both.
Both of us. Yeah, but I cannot wait to see this one. I genuinely mean that. In that I love all these episodes, so I'm really, really excited for next week.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting, and I'm like, I hope I don't sound stupid. I mean, I think I sounded pretty stupid when I couldn't remember Mulder, but then you know what? I think I covered up for it.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think the other guy. We're just gonna call him the other guy now. Like,
I'm sure he'll be fine as be referred to as the other guy on the show.
Scully and the other guy. But so I encourage everyone to. You go to YouTube and find Brian's special that he's mentioned, My Neighbour's House, Mr. Neighbour's House, sorry.
Mr. Neighbour's House.
Mr. Neighbour's House, sorry. While they do that, where else can they find you also as well? What else have you got coming up, Brian, that people might be interested in?
Well, let's see. So I'm doing another Mr. Neighbor's House next week, in fact. There's a series here in the U.S. called Another Period that's sort of like it's almost like one of those reality TV shows about a spoiled rich family, and it's set in the 1900s. So it's a lot of sort of like upper crust bad behavior. That's on Comedy Central, and that starts on Tuesday. And I think that's it. I'm in a movie called Futile and Stupid Gesture, which is about the origins of the National Lampoon.
Is this where you played John Landis?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That must be fun.
That's just like a cameo-tastic movie with all these people dressed up like they're comedy heroes. So that aired. I think that airs or drops Tuesday on Netflix.
Great.
No, not Tuesday. Friday. So yeah, it's a big media week, guys. Big media.
Yeah. Lots going on.
But then apart from that, I'm on Instagram at the Brian Huskey, and I'm on Twitter, but I like my Instagram better. So.
Well, we're not on Instagram, the Xcast. We should be really, but a lot of our listeners will be. So follow Brian, guys.
Thank you.
So yeah, thanks again. It's been
cool.
It's been really great to have you on.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it.
So yeah, big thanks to Brian for coming on the show, and we'll be back very soon for coverage for our listener mailbag for The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat, so you can find out what everyone thought about the episode, and we'll be back for more season 11 coverage after that. So always remember, guys, until next time, trust no one. The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and presented by Tony Black, alongside a dedicated group of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find us on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook at the Xcast and X-Files podcast, or our Facebook group, the Xcast Basement and X-Files podcast fan group, and our title song is by Will A, who you can find on Twitter at I am Will A-Y-E.